Hi everyone, thanks for being with me. Today I came across an Andrew Bolt video on Sky News. Look, you might think I watch Sky News all the time. I don't. I just look at their YouTube videos, get extremely upset about their right-wing propaganda that they're espousing and think, I need to talk about this. And this one is in particular in relation to the United States and the fact that in Florida, they're working very hard to change the African American history so that children will not be learning about the atrocities which occurred in relation to slavery. And as a result of that, Kamala Harris took a trip to Florida to talk about a particular issue, which was really in relation to the fact that they're now saying that slavery wasn't such a bad thing because African Americans learnt some incredible skills as a result of them being enslaved. So what the right wing and the racists will do, they will encapsulate that with, well, slavery was bad. We accept that. It was a terrible, terrible thing. But so it's a bit like Trump saying, but there are good people on both sides, which dismisses all of the bad shit that has happened by one particular side. So this is a thing that Americans tend to do, and I'm a bit fearful that here in Australia, perhaps through people like Andrew Bolt, one of the most horrific individuals on this planet, we will have a softening of approach to this in terms of Indigenous people, particularly when it comes to the No campaign with regard to the referendum. So I just want to point this point out, because if we do not make a stand, if we do not start to call it out for what it is, then it will just become magnified, and more people on the right will be talking about it, and it becomes a bigger and bigger issue. I think it's best that we try and confront some of these issues as they occur. Now, to me, it would be like saying, well, Indigenous people were better off because they were provided with skills such as cleaning a house, cooking a meal, looking after cattle, doing all those things that they were taught to do once they were removed from their homes. And yet it's also, it's ignoring the fact that these people were quite happy living the way that they were until us white bastards came along and chose that we were going to rip them out of their sense of civilization, whatever that was, their cultural beliefs, everything, destroy all of that, teach them Christianity and other stupid friggin' religions, and because we believed that was better for them. Well, what I do is see the same thing happening today in relation to some of these issues that are now expressed African American people and so on. And I'm sure that really some of these ideas that we're seeing over there through the Trumpism that is America are seeping through here. Hence the reason why Bolt has brought this bloke by the name of Amy Korowitz onto his show to talk about this particular issue, because he wants to see this, Bolt wants to see this become an issue here in Australia. So let's promote it as best as we can through your minuscule Sky network that has, very few followers. But nevertheless, this is keeping an eye on what the right wing are doing so that we can be wary of their behaviour and we can counter it with other arguments. And so I've got a bit of this to play of Amy Korowitz talking about this stuff. Now, I looked at Amy's YouTube channel, and he talks about Black Lives Matters. Now, he's a conservative filmmaker, be that as it is, but he is conservative, so he is right-wing, and that's pretty open and obvious, hence the reason why he's on the Bolt show. But it is evident from watching his videos that he focused on Black Lives Matter in particular, and he focused on the violence that occurred and spoke to a number of African American young people who believed that, well, they're violent towards us, Why can't we be violent towards them? Perhaps violence is the only language they seem to understand. And hence, focus on the violence and the impact that had in Baltimore and other places around the US when Black Lives Matters were doing their thing a couple of years ago. So this is where he comes from. Nothing that I could see about the Black Lives Matter events, rallies and whatever in the United States. I could see nothing about those events that were peaceful, of which there were many. So he's focusing on the violence, making it appear that black people are violent, and that the whole thing around Black Lives Matter was certainly present because of the death of Brown, as it started off in the United States, and then developed around other police murders as a result. So we know what happened, we know the history, but it is always about the black person either not appreciating what the white person has given them, or that the black people are just violent. What can we say? So here's what he says. I'll play a little bit of this crap for you, so you get a sense and an understanding as to where he's coming from. I guess that's only fair, but we need to see it in the context that I've discussed. So here we go.
Being taught in Florida schools for decades, but they're rewriting it because they're trying to get rid of racial essentialism, right? The Democratic crowd is saying that trying to be against racial essentialism is racist, when in reality, if you're pushing racial essentialism, if you're pushing the idea that race is all important, to me, that's the most racist thing. But they end up hanging their hat on this 216-page curriculum on black.
I love that. So there's this notion that if race, that you shouldn't be pushing the fact that race is important. Okay, but if you're African American or an Indigenous Australian and you see so many policies and so many behaviours by the community in general that are simply racist, then it is important. You know, like, you're a white dude, man. You don't have to put up with racism every single day. You know, you live your life the way that you want to lead it because you're a privileged friggin' white guy. You're not a black guy. If you're a black guy, perhaps you'd be making different sorts of films and viewing this completely differently, but you're not. So without being able to, so he filters everything through that Caucasian privileged eyes and doesn't see things for how black people, other people, may view them. So let's hear what other crap he has to say.
The horrible terrors that black people have gone through in America in detail, obviously including.
So this is the way that they try to explain it. So they'll say, "Oh, look, I understand that this has been terrible for black people. I get all of that. However, and but are always added in at the end of these explanations."
Slavery. They hold their hat on one small little part of it, which said that during slavery, black people were able to acquire skills because they were forced to do labor. And they were able to use those skills because of black resiliency later in life to help them economically. I'm not exactly.
So it was black. So I like that idea too. So it was black resiliency. So let's give black people a compliment. So let's tell them that they're resilient. Well, frankly, buddy, if they weren't slaves in the first place, they'd still be resilient, right? If you hadn't taken them from their land in Africa, I'm sure that they would have been living their lives to the fullest, doing all the things that Africans do and also celebrating their culture and the way that they think and live in their way. But oh no, you had to come along, and you and your mates from centuries ago had to ship them to the United States and put them to work in lands so that you could make a profit off people and not pay them for doing the job that they were doing because you were too friggin' lazy to do it yourself. And as a result of that, you taught them all the skills and all the knowledge that they needed to have in order to become valuable people to society. What a load of friggin' crap. I can't talk about it enough in terms of, it makes me irate to think that people think like this and that they believe They believe that this is them being justified, they're able to justify the reasons why black people or people of a different colour or people of different religions, whichever way you like to look at it, that they somehow are better off because of my ancestors' behaviour, and that I must insist, therefore, that anything that refers to the negativity around black people should be taken out of our history books, and that we should start teaching other people, white people and black people, that they are better off because of what we were able to do for them by taking them away from their property and enslaving them. What a load of crap.
Somebody has to explain to me how that's racism. If anything,
I just did.
Resiliency of black people to be able to make the best of a horrific situation. Yet Kamala Harris, the Democratic crowd, has been pushing this as an example.
Your ancestors made the horrific situation. That's what I don't understand. Why in the hell can't you at least acknowledge that you're the bastards, white bastards, who stuffed this up for all these other people? Like, I just don't understand why you can't see that and why you don't get it.
Example of how racist Florida and by extension Ron DeSantis is.
Yeah, well, that's because Ron DeSantis is racist. I don't think anybody's going to dispute any of that from the crap that he's, well, unless, of course, you're a Republican.
That is really the key. It's really about Ron DeSantis, the Republican governor there, who's one of the candidates to be the Republican nominee for the presidential election against Joe Biden. So they've gone for him.
And in my view, a horrible human being. Horrible, horrible man.
Now, you've had a look at this course. It says slavery is bad, slavery is terrible, this happened, that was shocking, shocking, shocking. But as you just said, one thing is that African American slaves did learn some skills that helped them elsewhere.
But if they weren't God, am I the only one that understands this shit? If you hadn't removed them from their homeland to start with, they didn't need to learn your friggin' skills, right? You know, it's a bit like in China where the Uyghurs are removed from society and retrained because they have a different cultural and religious view to what the Chinese government required them to have. So some, and we object to that. Most people do. Because it's China. But because this stuff is done by our ancestors and is happening in our country, we see it kind of as okay.
It excuses anything. It just noted as a matter of fact. It is fact, is it not?
It is absolutely fact, and that fact does not take away or diminish one iota the horrors of slavery.
Yes, it does. You stupid, stupid man. It does. By talking about it, diminishes the experiences that African Americans and Indigenous people in Australia have had around being removed from and severed from their cultural beliefs, and enslaved. Whether we like it or not in Australia, we enslaved Indigenous people. There are heaps of photographs of back in the early 20th century when we had shackled Indigenous people, and we had insisted that Indigenous people work on our farms and in our houses as virtually slaves. This is what we did. Are we going to sit back now like Bolt and this dude and talk about that it was kind of okay? On one hand, I object to it greatly because I realise it was a terrible thing. And then not acknowledging, and I think this is my point, not acknowledging what these experiences were like for African Americans and for Indigenous people is racist. It's as simple as that. And I must make a stand against all of that. And I'd like to think that if you've got a comment to make, please make it down below. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what you think. Also, subscribe to my channel for more of these rants from me. And look, we've got to try and do something to confront all of this right-wing crap that we hear. I'm trying to do my best through my channel. I hope you join me in this fight as well. Look, take care of yourselves, everybody. Look after yourselves and make sure that you and your loved ones and everybody else are safe.